This is Joel Hastings with Dairy Business News. We're at the National DHI Convention in Sacramento, California in early March. I'm speaking at the moment with Jay Weiker, who is the CEO of the National Association of Animal Breeders, NAAB as we say in the industry. That's the trade association for the AI companies. Jay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, good to be here.
You spoke to the DHI audience today and mentioned not only some statistics, but also some trends that you're observing in the industry, and I thought they were quite fascinating.
Yeah.
Give us a couple of highlights of things that that stand out in your mind.
Right. Well, what we're seeing, and we've been watching and seeing over time, is that the reproduction programs on dairies today are more complex than they ever were. We have so many more tools and so many more options now. And the AI companies have been responsive and are producing and providing those type of products. Some of those products are sex semen. So we know that what we've seen is that as the utilization of sex semen has increased, the demand for conventional dairy semen has decreased. And now it hasn't maybe offset one for one, but part of the other product type that's taking up some of that market share is beef semen, beef that's being used on dairy.
And you've seen quite a rise in beef semen, and it's gone from being what you characterized as kind of leftover or tank cleaning to some very specific breeding programs that are geared to produce the correct genetics for beef on dairy.
Yeah, that's correct. It started out initially where they were just looking for low-priced beef semen. The dairy market was really in a low point, so they wanted just cheap semen. So it was a lot of whatever was available. But it's gotten more sophisticated and targeted over the last couple of years to the point where they have specific lines and crosses that are more suitable for Holsteins, more suitable for Jerseys. So it's almost breed specific which bulls will do better and work better on different breeds of females. And some of that's driven by what the feedlots want.
Yeah. You mentioned that the upward trend of beef semen has been noticeable the last couple of years.
Yes, it's been significant. Beef semen, since about 2017, we've seen a significant rise in the use of beef semen. Initially, we weren't capturing the statistics of where that was being used, so only for the last couple of years have we had our members reporting on that. And it's surprising that about 57% of the semen that's sold, about 57% of the beef semen that's sold goes into dairy herds. The rest goes into beef herds. We haven't seen a lot of growth of beef on beef. The tremendous growth has been on beef on dairy.
Sure. Speaking about other impacts from dairy breeding changes, you mentioned the impact of synchronization programs on not only dairy herds, but of course semen usage too.
Right.
So.
Yeah, synchronization programs have been a great tool for dairy producers and beef producers as well to increase their conception rates. And we've seen a lot of utilization of that. It's part of what has driven at least some increase on the beef side of the business. But our concern is, will producers be able to continue to use synchronization programs for the long term? How long will the public be acceptant of the use of these programs?
Sure. And you're also saying that it may have an impact on measuring the fertility of our females too.
That's correct. We're trying to, and we don't know, but we're trying to ask these questions of, are we actually selecting for females that are more fertile, or are we selecting females that respond very well to synchronization programs? And those are we need more data in order to make that analysis and to determine which are the more fertile animals.
You mentioned another area where things are changing in the breeding industry, but also there's kind of a gap in information, and that's the fact that semen is being used from more than one bull in a single unit, and that has some impacts.
Yes, we call that a heterospermic product, or some people call it pooled semen. And that's where they will take semen from a group of bulls, mix it in the lab before they process it, then they'll freeze it, and then they'll distribute it. So it could be a combination of 3, 4, or 5 different bulls. And some of our members would say that it's a more fertile product. And you can have different combinations of bulls. Some will have a calving ease group, some will have a high index group, some will have a type group. So it's really, we've seen an upward trend in that, even though it's been around for decades.
And sometimes even more than one breed.
And more than one breed, yes. It's less common, but it's a trend that we see it continuing to evolve over time.
And then, of course, with genomic testing, determining the parentage at the end of the,
Correct.
not at the end of the day, but at the beginning of the calf's life.
Correct.
You also mentioned that exports of U.S. semen continue to be very strong, and you mentioned that there's also an inflection point where exports outnumbered the usage of domestic. Just talk a little bit about those statistics.
Yeah, traditionally, our domestic market was always our biggest market. And the exports had been growing at a fairly steady pace until about 3 years ago when they were equal, where exports matched the amount of semen that was sold in the U.S. And since that time, though, exports have continued to climb and expand, whereas domestic sales are decreasing. And we see that continuing. We're not seeing much growth in the domestic market. The tremendous opportunities are in the export market.
Sure. There was a question at the end of your presentation, a question from the audience that it seemed like fairly timely. With the international scene that we see today, with the war in the Ukraine impacting Russia, with our relations with China being a little bit frosty, to say the least, how does that impact export sales, or how do you see that impacting export sales going forward?
Yes, our exports through the first 3 quarters have been up, they're positive, and taking into account everything that's going on around the world. So our exports, or our members' exports to Russia and Ukraine have continued. China has gone on. China is the #1 country for dairy semen exports from the U.S. We do expect it to continue, although a more significant disruption in one of those markets could obviously change that picture.
Sure.
But there's enough other markets that our members continue to sell into. They sell to over 104 countries around the world. And so it's not like we're just dependent on 1 or 2 markets. But some of those markets you mentioned, like China and Russia, are very, very key markets.
And problematic, perhaps.
And problematic,
yes. At this time.
Yes.
Well, Jay, we thank you for taking time to chat with us just a bit, and glad to bump into you here at the
Pleasure.
National DHI meeting in Sacramento, California.
My pleasure.
This is Jay Weiker with the National Association of Animal Breeders speaking to us. I'm your Dairy Business News host, Joel Hastings.
Thank you.